Hi, and welcome to DrupalBrief. This is an AI-generated summary of another video, podcast, or blog post. If you want to learn more about what's being discussed here, then please go check out the source. This podcast is produced by the team at Drupal Forge. Drupal Forge is the new #1 open-source development and hosting platform. It has all the functionality of the expensive platforms, but at very affordable prices. If you're looking for a new hosting provider, contact us for a demo before you get locked in. Okay, that's it. Make sure to click subscribe, and here we go.
Okay, welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We've grabbed a stack of source material today. Specifically, we're pulling insights from some excerpts of a YouTube transcript.
Right.
And our mission, as always, is to really dig in and, pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge just for you.
And our focus today is pretty specific. It's a practical tool for anyone working with data in Drupal.
Yeah.
A module called Views CSV Source.
Views CSV Source. Okay. So if you've ever wrestled with data, maybe stuck in a spreadsheet or, I don't know, some other external system, and you needed to get it displayed nicely on your website without that whole headache of importing it all into your Drupal database first.
Yeah, exactly. That's the core scenario.
Then, well, this deep dive is definitely for you. It's your shortcut to getting up to speed.
And that really is the main problem this module tackles, isn't it?
Seems like it.
The central challenge is presenting data that lives in like a simple flat file, a CSV, directly on a Drupal website, using the Views interface everyone knows, but crucially, without needing to migrate that data into the Drupal database itself.
So you skip that whole import step and keeping it synced later on.
Exactly. Avoids all that.
That sounds like a pretty big win right from the start.
It can be, yeah.
And the module doing this heavy lifting is appropriately named Views CSV Source.
Makes sense.
According to the source material we looked at, it's actually quite new, created March 2024 by Daniel Kithran at JSI.
Right, relatively recent. And the speaker in the source was apparently really clear about something.
Oh, yeah.
That Daniel was emphatic. His colleague and co-maintainer, Nia Cathon, deserves, significant credit too.
Good to acknowledge the team effort.
Sounds like it was definitely a collaboration from the beginning.
And for something so new, it seems pretty mature already. It's hit a stable 1.0.1 version.
Which is always a good sign, stability-wise.
Definitely.
And compatibility looks impressive. It works with Drupal 8.8, 9, 10, and even ready for 11.
Wow, all the way to 11 already.
Yeah, and the latest release, according to the source, was just last month. So it's, actively maintained.
That's key. Plus, it seems to tick all the right boxes for a reliable contrib module. It's got security coverage, solid test coverage, and the source mentioned it has really good documentation, including a helpful README to get you started.
Yeah, good docs are crucial. What's also interesting, based on the source, is the situation with open issues.
Okay.
It listed 4 open issues on Drupal.org, and the speaker really highlighted this, none of them are actually bugs.
No bugs, just 4 issues.
Apparently, yeah. They seem to be things like feature requests or, ideas for enhancements.
For a module this new, that's a really strong signal.
It really is.
And people are using it. The source cited Drupal.org data saying it's already on 56 sites.
So it's finding its audience quickly.
It seems that way.
So, okay, how does it actually, work? The basic idea is quite neat. Once you install the module, you just go create a standard Drupal view, the same way you always would.
Okay, familiar ground so far. But the magic must happen when you pick the data source.
Exactly. Instead of choosing, nodes or users or taxonomy terms from your Drupal database, this view points directly to a CSV file instead.
Okay. And where does that CSV file have to live? On the server.
You've got flexibility there. You can point the view to a file that's just sitting in your site's file system.
Right.
Or you can point it to a file hosted somewhere else entirely, like a remote URL.
Oh, interesting. What if that remote file needs, a password or something?
Good question. The source mentioned that if it needs authentication, you can actually include encoded credentials in a header.
Okay, so you can securely access private remote files too. That opens up possibilities.
It really does. For grabbing data from all sorts of external sources.
So you've aimed your view at the CSV. How do you tell it, I want this column and that column,
Yeah, how do you select the data? It introduces this concept called CSV fields within the Views UI.
CSV fields.
Okay.
Think of them as mapping directly to the columns in your spreadsheet. You just select these CSV fields like you'd select normal Drupal fields when building your view display.
Okay. So it must read the header row of the CSV, right? and uses those as the field names.
That's exactly it. It pulls in the headers, which makes it so much easier to configure.
That's crucial for usability, definitely.
Absolutely. And then you can use standard views features you already know, like the group by function.
Right, grouping rows.
Yeah, which in this context lets you group rows that share the same value in a specific CSV column. Useful for summarizing or maybe setting up data for charts, like the source suggested.
Makes sense. Okay, filtering. That's usually the next big thing. If my CSV has, I don't know, thousands of rows, how do I let my users narrow things down?
Right, filtering is key. And the module offers something pretty cool here. You can do standard text filters on the CSV fields, just typing in keywords.
Okay, basic text search. But it also has a specific plugin called a CSV Field Options Filter. And this sounds really user-friendly.
Oh, tell me more. What does that do?
So this filter automatically looks at the column you specify in your CSV file.
Yeah.
And it generates a drop-down menu. And that menu contains all the unique values it finds in that column.
Oh, wow. So it builds the filter options from the data itself.
Exactly. The source specifically called this out as very cool, and I have to agree.
Yeah, that is cool.
It means your users are selecting from actual data points. They don't have to guess or type things perfectly.
Takes a lot of potential user error out of the picture. Very nice. And it still has the regular sort and contextual filter plugins, too.
Yep. The source confirmed you get the standard views sorting and contextual filtering capabilities.
Yeah.
They just work on your CSV data instead of database data.
Great. So you've pulled the data in, you've filtered it, sorted it, then you just display it using standard views displays, like a table, or maybe hook it up to a charting library.
That's the idea. Standard views displays like tables, or, feeding it into charts. The source even mentioned you could potentially use other contributed modules, like View Simple Math Field, to do further manipulation on the output.
Okay, so once it's in the view, it acts pretty much like regular views data for display purposes.
Pretty much, yeah, within the scope of what views can do.
Now, the source material brought up something. They called it both amazing and terrifying.
Ah, yes, I remember that part.
The terrifying bit seemed to be about data validation.
Yeah. The speaker voiced a very common concern when you're dealing with CSVs, right?
Definitely.
How easily programs like Excel or Google Sheets can sometimes, mangle the files, introduce weird formatting, unexpected data types.
Oh, yeah. Stray commas, weird quotes.
Exactly. And the fear was that everybody's going to be using Excel or Google Sheets to create or edit these source files.
Which is probably true in many cases. It's a valid worry. Did the source offer much on how the module handles potentially messy data?
The speaker admitted they hadn't looked super deeply into the validation side specifically.
Okay.
But they did suggest, the cleaner your source CSV is to start with, the more reliably the module is going to work, which makes sense.
Garbage in, garbage out, kind of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
But they also noted that quite a bit of work has gone into it, which implies the module probably has some built-in robustness, some ability to handle data from what they called suspect sources.
So maybe not like strict data type enforcement, but perhaps it's good at parsing CSVs even if they're not perfectly formatted.
That seems like a reasonable interpretation from the source.
Yeah.
It acknowledges the reality of CSV creation, but also suggests, source quality still matters. It's not a magic data cleaning tool.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Let's definitely pivot to the amazing part then, the use cases. Why would someone choose this? Maybe despite those potential validation concerns, where does it really shine?
Well, one area highlighted was for internal tools. It could act as a quick sort of go-between. Maybe you need to filter or quickly visualize some data before you import it somewhere more permanent, like into Tableau or something.
Ah, like a quick preview and filter layer.
Yeah, especially if the data isn't quite final or you don't want users messing with the raw spreadsheet directly. This gives them a read-only, filterable view pretty quickly.
I can see that. A fast way to get eyes on data without committing it.
But maybe a more powerful application is for organizations, or maybe their customers, who manage big data sets in external systems, particularly like older legacy systems.
Right, the ones that often don't have nice modern APIs.
Exactly. Or maybe the only way to get data out is for it to just dump a flat file, a CSV.
And maybe bringing all that data into Drupal's database doesn't really add core value, or it just creates a huge data syncing headache down the line.
Precisely. If those systems can just output a CSV, this module gives you a pretty straightforward way to display that data cleanly within the Drupal site for users who need to see it there. You sort of bypass the whole complexity of writing migrations or setting up ongoing sync processes into the Drupal database.
The source had a really specific example, didn't it? Something about healthcare.
Yes. That was a good one.
Okay.
They described a healthcare system. They had legacy systems, no APIs.
Okay.
But they needed critical data, like dosing instructions for medications to be available internally on their Drupal-based intranet.
Right, for staff, presumably.
Yeah. And Views CSV Source provided an easy way, as they put it, to make that data accessible and searchable within Drupal. Data that probably started as just a flat file export from the old system.
Wow, okay. So no big integration project needed, just get the CSV onto the server or a URL, point the view at it.
Pretty much. It really highlights the value in those real-world situations where other integration methods are just too hard or too expensive.
And it provides a big alternative to writing custom code, right?
Absolutely. The source made a great point here. For a developer, maybe writing a custom migration script to pull a CSV into a custom Drupal table isn't, a huge burden.
Manageable, yeah.
But for a site builder, someone who primarily works through the Drupal UI configuring things, the source said that would likely be a pretty big ask. Designing the table schema, writing the migration plugin.
Yeah, that's definitely developer territory, not typical site building.
So this module gives you a generic UI-driven way to ingest, as the source put it, an arbitrary number of columns with arbitrary content.
Flexible.
And then build views on top of that data using the standard Views UI. Building something that flexible with a custom migration would be way more complex.
So it really democratizes that process for site builders.
In a way, yeah, for this specific task.
So the takeaway seems to be it solves a specific niche, maybe, but potentially a very common one, especially for intranets or dealing with those tricky legacy systems.
That seems spot on, solving that edge case really well in a way that's much more accessible.
Okay, let's maybe recap some of the technical aspects and benefits that make it stand out. We mentioned it pulls in the headers from the CSV.
Yeah, which is key for making the views configuration feel natural. Those headers become your field names.
Right.
And we should definitely re-emphasize that CSV field options filter.
The drop-down generator.
Yeah, generating that drop-down of unique values directly from the data in the column. That's a huge usability win, especially for filtering big lists.
Definitely seems like one of the killer features. And fundamentally, just to be clear, the data isn't being loaded into the Drupal database at all.
Correct. That's the core concept.
It's loaded when the page is displayed.
Exactly. At the time of display on the front end, it reads directly from the CSV file, bypasses the database for this data entirely.
Which avoids all those import sync issues we talked about.
Right. And interestingly, the source even mentioned a potential performance benefit noted on the project page.
Really? Faster than the database.
Apparently, for very large data sets, just ingesting that flat file directly via PHP could sometimes be much faster than running all that data through Drupal's database abstraction layer and queries.
Huh. That's surprising, but good to know. Kind of counterintuitive sometimes.
It can be, yeah. And what about accessibility? The source mentioned something there, too.
Oh, right. Accessibility. How does this help?
Well, it ties into best practices. Often, for things like charts or data visualizations, it's recommended you also provide the raw data itself for assistive technologies.
Okay, makes sense.
Since this module is displaying data directly from the CSV file,
Yeah.
it makes it really easy, as the source put it, to have both things together. You can have your visual chart display powered by the view, and also easily provide access to the underlying flat file data it's based on. Maybe just a download link to the CSV. All in. Like a single display.
Ah, because the source data is that accessible flat file already. You don't have to generate a separate export.
Exactly. It's a really neat way to handle that requirement naturally.
Very elegant. Okay, one more technical point. Caching. If it's not in the database, can you still cache the results to make it fast on repeat views?
Good question. Yes, the source confirmed caching is still in play.
Phew.
While the data isn't stored persistently in the database, the output of the view can absolutely be cached by Drupal's caching system, depending on how you configure the view's caching settings.
Standard Drupal caching.
Exactly. And if you happen to be sourcing the file from a remote URL, you might even get caching benefits from a CDN potentially.
Okay, so performance optimization is still definitely possible.
Yeah, you're not losing out on caching just because the source isn't the database.
Okay, so wrapping things up. We've taken a deep dive into Views CSV Source, guided by these YouTube transcript excerpts. We've looked at its main purpose, those key features like the unique filter, the sort of validation challenges.
The terrifying part.
Right. And also the really powerful use cases, especially around legacy systems and intranets.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a tool that solves a very specific problem, as the source noted. Maybe niche, but potentially quite common.
Getting that external data visible without the whole database import hassle, it seems to do that in a really practical, accessible way.
It's a great example of how these focused, well-built, contributed modules can really fill important gaps in Drupal's functionality.
Absolutely. So here's maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
We know legacy systems and external data sources without easy APIs are everywhere, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
So how else might tools like this one, tools that let you display data without full database integration, change how we think about getting information onto the web? Could we see similar approaches for, I don't know, other simple file formats? Or maybe even directly handling streams of data, bypassing the database altogether in more scenarios?
Interesting question. Where else could this direct from source display model be applied?
Exactly. Something to think about. Until our next deep dive.
Okay, we're done. To close off this podcast, I just wanted to remind you that this brief was a fully AI-generated summary, and we take no credit for the original content. If you want to learn more, then check out the source. This podcast is produced by the team at Drupal Forge. Drupal Forge is the new #1 open-source development and hosting platform. It has all the functionality of the expensive platforms, but at very affordable prices. If you're looking for a new hosting provider, contact us for a demo before you get locked in. And if you like this podcast, hit subscribe, post a link on social media, and recommend it to 2 friends. That's it. See you next time. Bye for now.